there's this lifestyle creep, right? Your life is kind of, you did a budget when you were younger. Of course you did, to figure out, how much you had coming in, how much going out. But at this stage, there's a lot of moving parts, and you probably haven't really taken a cold look at where you're spending your money. So the first thing you do is, where can I get lean and mean? Take a good look at that budget.
Do you want to be better with money but dread the math? I get it. That's why this show is not focused on math, the markets, meme stocks, or even economic predictions. It is focused on how money fits into your daily life, from having healthy money conversations to caring for an aging parent. I'm Karen Coyne, certified financial planner professional and your host of Money Without Math. Join us for conversations that are practical, sometimes philosophical, and always fresh. Learn more about me at raymondjames.com/clarity, and be sure to subscribe. 2025 marks the largest wave of Americans turning 65 in history. And while boomers have naturally been in the spotlight, the oldest members of Generation X have quietly been turning 60 this year. Some of us Gen Xers may still think of ourselves as forever young, but the reality is that Social Security and retirement are just around the corner. And many in this group are financially unprepared and headed towards what could be a retirement crisis. So today we're joined by two personal finance experts, Kerry Hannon and Janna Herron, co-authors of Retirement Bites, a Gen X guide to securing your financial future. Kerry is a leading authority and strategist on retirement, jobs, career transitions, entrepreneurship, and personal finance. She's a senior columnist and on-air expert at Yahoo Finance. Janna is a freelance journalist covering personal finance, housing, consumer behavior, and the economy. She's currently on assignment as a senior editor in the Wall Street Journal's podcast department. Welcome, ladies.
Hi, thank you.
Great to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. Congratulations on your book. I love the title.
Yeah.
We get that a lot, actually.
Yes. I'm like, reality bites, retirement bites. There's so much to talk about here.
Yeah, it's about the angst, right, Janna?
Oh, yeah. It really just taps into that. You have the angst when you're young, we have the angst when we're old.
Yes. And that's a great segue because, I've seen recently several articles, research items pointing to the fact that Generation X is not really, as a whole, prepared for retirement. They're not confident. They haven't saved enough. I mean, do they have a reason to feel angsty, Janna?
I think a lot of Gen Xers do. I think we as a generation, we're stuck in this transition period between pensions and 401ks. And when those 401ks came on the scene, we weren't told how necessary they were going to be for our retirement. That savings message didn't get across until much later in our careers. And so we started from behind. And so now we're looking, the oldest of the generation, 10 years away, 5 years away from retirement, and probably going, oh man, I wish I had gotten that savings message earlier, but what am I going to do?
Mm-hmm. Right. Or maybe for those that did get the savings message, right, we had the dot-com bubble, we had 9/11, we had the great financial crisis, which was a huge setback for many.
Definitely. And we also have just life going on where you're in this very gnarly time where you've got aging parents, a lot of us, worrying about them if they're going to be financially secure as they get older and need more care. And a lot of us have children, some maybe not even in college yet, so you still have that to think about. Others might have children who have just graduated or young adults. And right now, the economy and the job market is really, really not great for those young people. And so you're probably worrying about your kids and do I need to help them out with rent? Do I need them, help them get a car? Are they going to find a job? So you have like all these other financial worries that are tied to your life, besides just your own retirement.
Absolutely. I feel like I have conversations with my peers every week about being in the sandwich generation, caring for aging parents. Just yesterday, I ran into someone at the mall, and that's exactly what came up. Um, Kerry, what are your thoughts on, when you two were putting this book together, where, if someone is feeling this angst, where is the first place you think or that you recommend that they start getting it together?
Yeah, the message of the book is, yeah, you may very well be behind on your retirement savings, or you may not be, but you think you are, just because you're not. It's so uncertain. Like the whole idea of retirement is a time in life that there's a great deal of uncertainty around what your costs are going to be, all those sorts of things. And so the easiest thing to do is to break it down into little pieces. The first thing to do is and everyone will roll their eyes when we say this, but it's to do a budget. Jen and I are very positive in this book about ways to take action. And this is the simplest thing you can do, because when you get to this stage in life, you have what in general, and I talk about this a lot, there's this lifestyle creep, right? Your life is kind of, you did a budget when you were younger. Of course you did, to figure out, how much you had coming in, how much going out. But at this stage, there's a lot of moving parts, and you probably haven't really taken a cold look at where you're spending your money. So the first thing you do is, where can I get lean and mean? Take a good look at that budget. Look at where your investments are. We've had several jobs at this point. So we have retirement accounts sort of scattered around at different employers, or in an IRA and in a retirement plan at an employer. What do you really have saved for retirement and saved outside of retirement? What assets do you have? Do you own real estate? What other things are part of your total wealth? So this is starting with a budget, then moving into what's your whole financial picture look like. But again, these are steps that you can take, and you can start small. We're not saying throw it all up in the air and expect you're going to get that magic answer, but it is a way to get a hold of where we're going. And Janna, you might want to elaborate a little, especially on the lifestyle creep part of it, because you've experienced this a little.
Absolutely. I mean, for a lot of us, we're actually earning a lot of money, based in our careers. We've been doing whatever we've been doing for decades now, and so we're probably close, if not at our prime earning years. And once you start getting more money in the door, you get a little looser, and you're like, okay, it's fine to do that dinner out tonight and not really think about it. And but those things pile up, and I'm as guilty as the next person of a little bit of lifestyle creep and just being a little looser with the money. Um, but it is, if you are worried, it's a good thing to go back to those basics, because otherwise your head is in the sand, right? And so you just got to know, where is that money going? And, where could some of it be redirected maybe into extra savings at this point?
Okay, so a reality check. What do I have? And of what I do have, of my cash coming in, where is it going? What about like side hustles? Do you talk about, do we need to consider, for those who may not, they've done the inventory, they've done the analysis, and there's not a lot of wiggle room. Now what?
Well, I love the idea of work in any way you look at it. And because work is so engaging, especially if you can find, we often don't have time. If you're at your peak earnings years and you're going full steam at your employer, you may not have that time to do the side hustle. But if there is a possibility that there's something, and I'm thinking, I always encourage people to think of work as part of your retirement plan in some fashion. And so it may not be for the entirety, obviously, of your retirement phase of life, but for the first bunch of years, if you can keep having income coming in the door, you stave off dipping into those retirement accounts, you perhaps adding to those accounts, pushing back Social Security till age 70 when you get the biggest bang for your buck, so to speak. And so this is a time to start thinking about what kinds of work you might want to do when you step away from the primary working career. And so I like to encourage people to start 5 years ahead of time. If there's something you think you passed up at a younger age that you always wanted to do, or a hobby or a passion you have, this is the time that you can start learning about it, reaching out and doing those informational interviews with people. And yes, if you can start doing a little side gig, just try it out on the side. You find out whether it's as dreamy as you think it's going to be.
Hmm.
And it might be time to start adding the skills that would help you make that transition to working in a different fashion when you step away from your primary career. But it's honestly, back to your original point about a side hustle, of course, it's always good to have an extra bit of income, but you have to be super careful not to interfere with your primary career.
Right. Well, and like we were just talking about, sandwich generation, who has time for that? I mean, you're raising kids. If you're caring for aging parents, you already have a full-time job. A side hustle sounds great, but maybe that's not in the cards either.
Yeah. But if you can, but again, if you want to be doing that prep work for the next stage, you can find ways that you can volunteer, you can moonlight, you can job. There are ways to learn about potential work opportunities and adding skills that aren't going to take away from your primary career right now, but they will set you up for continuing to earn in some fashion later on in your early stages of retirement.
Hmm. Janna, do you have anything to add to that? I saw you nodding.
Well, I mean, it's really interesting that Kerry talks about this because um, I went through a layoff earlier this year and found myself in a position where I was like, what do I do next? And how do I get back into the job market? And I have this really great opportunity now that I'm doing, and I'm learning more about podcasting. Right. And that's increasing my skills as a journalist, and just, as anybody who makes content. So that can help me going forward when I maybe start thinking about, okay, maybe I'm going to step away from the big earning primary job and do that step down retirement. And now I have this other skill set that I can also lean on. So
Yeah.
always like learning, and I think that's harder when you get a little bit older. um I know how many times I'm like, oh gosh, I remember how it used to be, and I really wish I could go back to it in the workplace, and that's just not going to help. So I have, all these people who know very much about journalism when it comes to podcasting, and I'm learning so much. It's been exhausting but thrilling.
Yeah, that's great. And this is definitely a theme that's come up, in different ways over the course of this podcast, as you can imagine, as it's related to retirement. But I think you just can't underscore it enough that, don't wait until you're at or near what you hope to be the finish line, and then only to discover that what you thought was going to be your passion, you really don't enjoy at all, or it doesn't bring you joy. Dig into those things now, and don't be afraid to try new things, take risks.
Karen, one other thing, I want to interrupt you for one
Oh,
second.
yeah.
Sorry to do this, but the other thing to consider here is we're at a time where there have been a lot of layoffs.
Mm,
And if you're Gen X and you are facing this, you're undergoing this sort of really rattling and confidence shattering experience. And you know that retirement is now in your windshield in a way that it never has been before. You can't be afraid to jump on a contract position that maybe is stretching your skills. Maybe it's out of your wheelhouse, maybe a little bit. You don't have the perfect skills for it, but it opens your window to something. Maybe it wasn't exactly what you were seeking, but oh my gosh, this contract position for X amount of months could very well lead to a full-time position right at that employer. And at the very least, what Janna just said, it's adding to your skill set. It's making you more marketable. It's keeping your resume alive. Those red flags of gaps in your employment aren't there because you've taken a chance. You reached out and took an opportunity for a contract. A lot of people go, oh no, but I'm looking for full-time, or I'm looking for remote. Listen, if you have to be in-house, if it has to be contract, give it a shot. There's no harm in trying, and it's a great avenue to stay employed and also keep keep socking away money for retirement and keep your finances in order. It's really important. I think what Janna's example is super indicative of what a lot of Gen Xers may be facing right now.
Now, so Kerry, along those lines, what are you seeing and hearing about, so we're in midlife, Gen X is clearly in midlife. And one concern I think that a lot of folks have at that stage in life is who's going to want me? If I'm 55 and I've just lost my job and I've been laid off, how am I going to find another job at 55?
Well, you can. And here's the thing. If your skills are up to date and you have not had big gaps in your resume, you will get hired. People want people who can step in and do the job now. They don't want to have to train you to, onboard you in any significant way. If there is a need for an experienced worker, you're there, you're ready, and you can go. So this is something you have to own it. You have to have that moxie and show that, yeah, your experience is valued, and a lot of employers will recognize that. I'm not saying that ageism isn't alive and well in the workplace. It truly is. There's no question about that. But if you can show that your skills are sharp, that you're engaged right now, all of these things are going to help you stay employed and find work at this stage of life. No, it's not an easy skate. I'm not saying that this is simple stuff, but it can be done, and it comes right back to your network. And this is the time to really make sure not only are your skills sharp, but how good is your network? Who can you talk to? And be honest about it. It's not embarrassing to be out of work. This is what's happening right now. And so you need to just say, hey, who do I know that's working at this company where I see there's a job posting on their website, not necessarily on a job board? Because actually there are a lot of fake job postings these days. So you need to be pretty careful. But reach out to people you know who can help you get in, because employers still hire the old-fashioned way. They hire people they know or people they know. They want a reference. They don't want to take a chance. So if you can get in the door with a little help you still have to earn the job, but if someone can get your resume to somebody in a position to hire, then that's half of the game.
Yeah, well, that's very reassuring to hear from a workplace strategist. I tend to believe the same thing, but it's always good to hear that from someone who's really close to the action.
Yeah, the network part is very interesting because you've had a career for decades now as a Gen Xer, so you probably do have a really great network. So as long as but obviously we don't always talk to those people, whatever. So maybe it is time to reach out, even if nothing has happened yet, but just to make sure that people remember you and you care about, what they're doing in their career. So definitely that's something that people who are older or Gen Xers have maybe over younger people too.
Karen, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, and I think Janna is as well. If you're an older, experienced worker, you've got to have a presence on LinkedIn. This is absolutely where your network is, and you have to be showcasing yourself as an expert, lifting other people up, sharing their posts as well as your own work. It is a way to engage with people. Trust me, if you share a post that somebody in your field who you admire has put up, they notice, and it feels good. And I love it when people do with my work. I'm like, thank you. And it sort of builds this bond without even having to have a cup of coffee with them. So I think this is really a wonderful job resource for people who are job seeking at this age as Gen Xers, is to, who do you know? And reach out, and like Janna just said, lay the groundwork, even if you're not looking right now.
Yes. And I want to add or just emphasize something that you just shared, Kerry, with regards to LinkedIn. I think sometimes a lot of people think, I don't have time to create content, or I don't know how to do that. I'm not good at that. But you don't have to. Simply sharing and commenting, there are other ways to engage than, going all the way to the drawing board and creating, video content and choreographed content. It doesn't have to be all that. It can be as simple as lifting up others, sharing their work, commenting in a meaningful way, and then seeing that law of reciprocity kick in. That's very real. I was also going to share that, I've had conversations with clients this year, several, again, in the Gen X bracket, who unexpectedly lost their jobs. And one, when I talked to him to follow up and check in, see how how things were coming along. He said it was great. He actually landed on in a place that's even better. It's going wonderful. And, if anyone can get laid off, he said, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I think that's true because sometimes people get stuck in a moment and they don't realize that there's other stuff out there that, as you mentioned the word joy earlier, there's other things you can do to find joy in your days, and work is a big part of our day. So give it a shot, really.
It really is. Yes. And so I wanted to go back to the longevity piece that we were talking about, or kind of alluding to earlier as you were talking, Kerry, about, including working longer as part of the equation for, launching into a successful retirement. I think that's also a big difference for our generation as opposed to prior generations, is that it used to be like you retired, it was this day, it was a very finite kind of final thing rather. And then you have the images of either getting the gold watch or sitting in the rocking chair. I mean, like that was generations ago, but we know that that's not the image anymore that I think most of us associate with retirement. It's much more active. It's much more like this continuous act of evolving and reinvention. And that's kind of new territory because we haven't seen that play out with our parents. We haven't seen, guidebooks for those ahead of us kind of, work that playbook. We're figuring it out in a lot of ways for the first time.
Yeah, I think this is the test generation for that in many ways. Boomers did get that started, the younger boomers, but I do think, Karen, there's a couple of reasons why working longer is going to be critical, because if you figure you could potentially, with longevity, have 3 decades to live in retirement. You've got to be kidding if you think you have enough saved for 3 decades of life. And so Janna, I think, can jump on this pretty interesting because she did some great interviews about, for example, with longevity, the role that healthcare costs are going to play and why work matters.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the best chapters I felt for me personally when I was researching it about healthcare costs. And not just so much that, there's a huge number that, Fidelity puts out, other places put out how much you're going to spend on healthcare costs in retirement. And the interesting thing is that is an average. And so not everybody's going to be spending that amount. And what's important is to figure out which part of the end are you closer to. The end where it's a lot of money or end that's not as much money. And one of the experts I spoke to for the book, who is both a physician and a financial planner, she was like, this is the time for you to take your health really seriously. So if you have in your 40s and your 50s, if you have high blood pressure, if you are pre-diabetic, if you have high cholesterol, this is the time to get that under control, because this is the last window. Because if you can get it under control, then in your 60s and 70s, it's as if you were a healthy person. And so you are not going to be spending as much on healthcare in those retirement years. And so, that kind of like was an eye-opener for me, because I just began having higher blood pressure, and it was just it knocked me down. I was like, I can't believe this is happening to me.
Yes. And that's such an important call out. And I'm really glad that you brought that up, because it is obviously going to impact expenses, but also your quality of life.
Absolutely. Definitely. And you want to think that you're still in your 20s and 30s, but you're not, and your body doesn't respond the same way. And I'm sorry, my doctor was really great. She just like, you just can't run away from genetics for the rest of your life. And it's just, so don't feel bad about it. Just do something and make sure that you address those health issues that are cropping up so that your retirement looks great. So you can play with your grandkids if you have grandkids. You can travel the world if you want to go traveling and you want to hike huge peaks and whatever it is you want to do. It's going to be a lot more fun if you're feeling good.
Yes.
And Karen, the thing is, most people, the survey after survey, they'll say, they'll be asked when they're going to when they think they'll retire. And say, for example, they say 65. Well, almost to a T, they retire 3 years earlier than they think they're going to. And reason why is often because of health issues. And
Yep.
so it may be caregiving issues for an aging relative, which we've talked about briefly here. But what Jana's point is, this does, if you can't take control of your health as during your Gen X years, and in retirement bites, we talk about the importance of getting healthy, and this is huge. I mean, people use that term, health is wealth. Well, it's true. And if you want to continue working at least somewhat in retirement and bring in money, you've got to stay healthy or
Yes.
extend your working life. It comes down to your physical health.
Yes. And again, I think that's a big difference too from again the retirement of years ago where it was you retired and then you really didn't do much and you kind of faded away, and you'd hear the stories about folks that would just, die within a year of retiring. And, a woman I know who she's in her late 70s now. Her mantra is no dust, no rust. She is a woman who is not ever very still for very long. Yeah, recently I was speaking with someone who her father is an insurance agent for a very large, company that's well known across the country. And apparently within the company, it's kind of like this running joke. Well, not a joke might not be the right word, but that, you can't retire because after you retire, you pass away within 1 or 2 years. But I think what happens is it's become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So these agents are working until they're like 82, and they're just working and until the end. So they're taking your advice like really to the extreme, Kerry.
Well, it's more than money though. It's social engagement, it's mental engagement, it's community. These are the things that make for a long life that is rewarding. And it's important to realize that yes, money is a big piece of wanting to stay healthy and continuing to work, but are these mental components that just, and psychological ones that really give the oomph to having longevity, taking advantage of longevity.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. One thing I wanted to talk about before we wrap is that you talk about using your housing wealth in the book to increase retirement savings. Janna, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I definitely can. Housing's one of my favorite topics, actually. I covered it like I covered the housing bubble in the 2006, 2007, and then the foreclosure crisis. So I am big on housing. I have two houses, and Gen X, those who own homes, generally have seen a good run up in their home equity. And they probably also have very low mortgage rates if they still have mortgages. And so that's a source of wealth for them. And so if you're a little short on the savings in your retirement accounts, maybe this is one place that can help you bridge that gap. And it could be, downsizing, which is something that people do, moving to a more affordable area in retirement to unlock that equity. But it is a source of wealth that should help you if you can't make everything pencil out.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I always joke that my next move is going to be a tiny home or a condo or maybe even a bus because I just don't enjoy gardening, yard work, or any of the things that come with owning a home. Kerry, do you have any other thoughts to add on the housing piece?
Yeah, I just think it's critical to appreciate the fact that Gen X has done a very good job with having that wealth from home equity. I will add that they have a counter thing with they tend to have a great deal of credit card debt, which is something that is really important to take control of that aspect of your financial life, to pay those debts down as best you can before you launch into the retirement phase of your life, because that is going to really be the obstacle that trips you up on any of your dreams. So that's a difficult one to go after, but I think it's important for Gen X to realize that there are ways out. and to take advantage of different things. I mean, I'm even thinking when Janna was talking about the housing and having two homes, a lot of Gen Xers may have two properties at this point in their life. You could rent one
Hmm.
and bring in extra income that way. It's not simple to do that, but it's certainly a path to income that can help you, defray costs and maybe pay down some credit card debts, things like that.
We did interview somebody for the book who was doing just that. She and her husband, I think they got his parents' house, if I remember correctly. They bought out his brother, and they used that as a rental property. And that's a nice passive income stream that they have coming in. And so she was able to retire a little bit earlier than expected. And she's like on the older end of Gen X. And then but she's not completely retired. She's looking around to figure out how else she can do more passive income. She's interested in real estate, maybe commercial real estate, and she's looking at different ways to increase that income. But yeah, that's another way to maximize what you have.
So on that note, we've talked about a lot of the obstacles that Gen X has faced in preparing for retirement. What does this generation have? What do we have going for us that's in our favor?
Well, I'll start quickly. This is a super resilient, scrappy generation that has bounced back from lots of things already, is super independent. The latchkey kids, the ride the bike without the helmet kids, the Pop-Tart eaters, all that stuff. This is an awesome generation. And so it's not whatever. It's kind of like, we got this. It's just, this is a generation that gets things done. And maybe they're not like loud and out front about all of it, but they make it work. And I'm going to let Jana's riff off of that a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, we rage against the machine. Um, anyway, yeah, I agree. I think, Gen X also has like a DIY streak to them. I'm thinking about when, you know, furnishing our apartments back in the 90s and use cinder blocks and plywood to create,
Crates, so many
bookshelves,
crates.
crates, whatever those spools were that you got that became coffee tables, those spools from like industrial parks. Um, so I definitely think there's time. There is time. There's catch-up contributions that you can do for those who are uh, uh, older than 50, 50 and older. Um, and also, there is the great wealth transfer that's out there for some of the Gen Xers out there, largely more on the younger side, I would say. Might get that wealth from boomers, and that might help secure some of their retirement savings. Although the experts I talk to do not like to think about or do not like to factor in, you know, expected inheritances because you just never know.
Sure. Sure. Especially with the cost of care, if they need care. But yeah, I mean, we are definitely scrappy, independent. We will figure it out. And it sounds like, again, despite all these obstacles, a couple of the pathways that we've talked about today are, have that mindset of longevity and continuing to work and maybe reinvention along the way. Consider the assets that you already have, including the ones that are tied up maybe in your real estate. And don't be afraid to tap your network. That is a huge, valuable source that hopefully you've continued to nurture along the way. And if you haven't, it's not too late to get to work, right?
That's right.
Well, Kerry and Janna, thank you so much for joining me today. We'll be sure to link to Retirement Bites in the show notes, and congratulations again on the book.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again for listening. Please follow us on Spotify if you're not already so you don't miss any future episodes. We'd also love for you to rate the show while you're there. Connect with us on social. Search Karen Coyne CFP on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. If you have feedback or if we can be of service in any way, please let us know. And now for the standard disclosures. Opinions expressed are those of Karen Coyne and not those of Raymond James Financial Services or Raymond James. Securities offered through Raymond James Financial Services Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors Incorporated. Clarity Planning is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services. Karen Coyne Financial Advisors, located at 12920 Connemara Drive, Suite 202, Hagerstown, Maryland, 21742. Phone 301-739-7002. Any opinions expressed by Kerry Hannon or Janna Herron are not necessarily those of Raymond James. Raymond James is not affiliated with nor endorses Kerry Hannon or Janna Herron or Retirement Bites. This podcast is for informational purposes only.